Welcome to a space where we aim to empower and encourage all of our listeners to strive for inclusive excellence.
By hearing other stories, we can bridge gaps across differences to foster empathy and to value others' lived experiences to enhance our shared existence.
Welcome.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you join us today.
And with this being our first podcast, we want to tell you a little bit about who we are
and what shared existence is. So, to get started, I'm Barb Hansen, and I have just a little over 17 years of experience working in education. I started off as a paraeducator, and as my career advanced, I had experience working as a college access counselor, student support services director, and most recently as a culture and climate transformation specialist, where I oversaw the district's programming and supports for those experiencing homelessness in foster care, as well as did a lot of work around equity. Most recently, I have left that career for consulting, and the focus is now on doing this, on improving our shared existence.
And I'm Cynthia Jeffers. I have a career background in sales and management, especially in the telecommunication industry. I've recently pivoted to consulting and coaching around diversity, equity, inclusion to have a more sense of belonging in spaces for the people we serve. It's just one of those things that we felt that it was definitely necessary and needed to have this type of business in our environment.
And so how we came to that place of pivoting, of leaving our careers, our places of comfort, the areas that we felt we were an expert in and had been for nearly 2 decades. Uh, let, let's talk a little bit about our why, right? Let us share about some of our personal experiences.
So for me, growing up in Wisconsin, primarily in Milwaukee, it was very diverse. However, it still had its challenges. Um, the city still was very segregated for the most part. And even though I learned how to navigate within those spaces, by the time I got to my professional career, there was still spaces that it felt very uncomfortable. Um, so in my tenure, I tried to do the best I could to create spaces that were inclusive, uh, whether it was diversity, um, and made the employees have equitable opportunities.
So, Cynthia, when you say, navigating these systems, can you tell them a little bit with uh, what you're alluding to? What's your identity? How do you identify?
I am a Black woman who identifies as a lesbian.
Okay, so when you're talking about navigating these spaces, what parts of your identity were you referring to as creating some of those challenges or impacting that sense of belonging?
In my career, there were not a lot of African Americans in the leadership roles, and if there were in those spaces, however, they would not um, be identified with the same sexual orientation. So it just became very clear to me that I wanted to have um, more people that identified and looked like me in these spaces to have also a voice to be heard. What about you?
So my story, I think, goes back as well to my childhood. I grew up as a white girl in a white community surrounded by people that looked and lived a lot like me. There was not diversity, and I don't recall engaging with others who were much more diverse. And it had tremendous impact on my ability to understand cultural differences. It was when I was in my early 20s, and I moved to Omaha, where I had a opportunity to really grow my intercultural competence by immersing myself in a space that I was now one of. Walking into a meeting that all the other staff were of a different race was for the first time in my life that I thought about my skin color, which probably most white people can relate to, but for others, that's not necessarily the case.
Correct. Too often I would walk into spaces where I would be the only black person, um, whether male or female, and just would make me feel very uncomfortable. Whether that be in my classrooms, growing up in school, in my work profession, or sometimes just restaurants. It was always an opportunity to feel that isolation.
Right. And so that realization of race or your color of skin came much earlier for you than it did for me.
Correct. And that allowed me to start to identify that not in every space that you would be included or it felt equitable. And I started to learn that early on. So I had to gather skills and learn how to navigate within those spaces where I did not see or feel that people identified as me, like me. And it became a mission to have these create safe spaces in places that I was going to be involved in.
Right. And so as I progress in my journey, and I'm still on that journey because nobody gets to a place of arrival. There's always more work to do. I worked very hard to ensure that those voices who were not being heard were heard, and valuing lived experience over those who were making decisions just based on their position, right? So largely in education, the leadership is white, and those that are at the top are also white. So you have white people leading with while they're consulting other white people, and I was constantly asking questions and pushing, those conversations with regarding the lack of representation, right? And so um, it has been really eye opening to have that experience, but also having interactions with those who do have different backgrounds, uh, pushing back to my own thoughts and my own processes, and exposing some of the work that I still had to do.
And yeah, agreed, because the work's never done. I mean, even in my own journey, trying to understand why these feelings um, were so prevalent in my life, and understand that there was systematic things that were kind of happening that also created these biases um, in people that I interact with or just in situations. And so, w- you know, the instances where you would feel uncomfortable for a moment or a brief period of time, like I said, was something that I live with daily.
Hmm.
And we need to, this is why we wanted to create this space and this organization to help people see that um, we all have lived experiences that are very similar, uh, but with hearing stories such as yours and mine and other people who have their story to tell, we can all get to the same shared existence and have that sense of community amongst each other.
And we're not here acting like we know everything or have the solution, or are, um, all knowing. There have been and are people that have been doing this work and leading this fight forever. And so the amount of work that needs to be done, we're not minimizing. We just believe strongly that in hearing other people's experiences, we can grow in our understanding and grow in our empathy, and ultimately just be more proficient in that uh, intercultural development. We are hopeful that as we share our journey and share others' journeys, that we can stop generalizing people by how they identify, whether it's race, culture, religion, and so forth. because I think even by design, it's structured that we feel a type of way about those who live or look different than us. And there's work to be done in that as well. And we'll talk more about that in our series. But what really kind of launched this into action from just a plan or a conversation is the experience we've had with our youngest, and as a Black child in the school system, how we were watching how the biases in everyday systems cause tremendous harm.
And again, which is more reason why we wanted to create a safe space so that he can grow up and have, a full, vibrant experience about his school and education, have a full ness in his identity, and not feel that he's being minimized or not being seen or heard or represented.
Correct. And we want this for him, and we want this for all kids. So we felt like we had no choice but to do this work for children and adults everywhere. People all deserve to have that sense of belonging, to be safe in those spaces, and help people that are well intending to see and understand that the role of implicit bias, based on their experiencing and based on their programming, can and does cause harm. And how can we change that? How can we help people reprogram how they view those differences and how they look at others whose experiences may not be the same as theirs?
So tune in to our podcast so that you can hear some of the stories that we share about how we are going to help enhance our lived experience so that we can help shift mindsets.
Absolutely. There will be more stories to come, and if you would like to share yours, reach out to us. We would love to have you on our podcast and feature your story, and just keep coming back. If one week it is uncomfortable, and the topic doesn't sit well with you, no, that's okay. Part of this is working through those feelings and pushing through, and just keep coming back.
So thank you again for listening and tune in next time.
Thank you. Be sure to follow and come back as we explore people's experiences.
Also, follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok as Shared Existence LLC.